All right, we are back for a part two in the video I started from last time, which was the Kubernetes starter kit. I have this repo out here, K3s Argo CD starter. This repo was to get you up and started with Kubernetes on a single node with Argo CD, Cilium, and Cloudflare. So on part two, we're going to talk about Talos OS, Proxmox, Terraform, and getting that set up. Now, before we begin, if you're going to start from this point, you really do need to do this video first in this series if you're very fresh to Kubernetes, because this will get you everything you need to know. And the second video, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to skip out on the parts where I set up Argo, the parts where I set up Cloudflare, all the apps, because this video still applies. What we're going to be focusing on is getting set up Talos, terraforming it into Proxmox, as well as we'll do a little bit of Longhorn. So if you're wondering, well, how did you get the Cloudflare set up? How did you get all that? Use this video. It like most of the README that I'm about to show you in this new repo actually builds off of this. So I started a new repo called Talos Argo CD Proxmox Starter, and this is kind of the evolution of this video. So before we begin, let's talk a little bit about Talos. So Talos is a operating system that's Linux that's designed for Kubernetes, and it only has like minimal binaries installed, and you can't SSH into it. It's immutable. So when we say immutable, it means you can't run like sudo apt get install X, Y, or Z. Like you can't install things. Like you get the operating system and then you have Kubernetes. So what you will need to do to start is you'll actually kind of need to build up your ISO image. So you'll go to factory.talos.dev. In our scenario, we're going to do a bare metal machine. We're going to choose this version. That's the latest. You can always upgrade it later. And then you're going to choose your machine architecture. And we're going to do AMD 64. So if you have like I don't know, really a lot of ARM 64 devices. I don't think Talos works on a Raspberry Pi. It might not. Last time I checked, it didn't. Maybe a Mac Mini. That would be kind of weird. You're probably going to find yourself using AMD 64 the most. Now, these are the extensions. This is what I'm talking about. So Kubernetes, or I'm sorry, Talos OS is immutable. So the things you need pre-installed, you need to select ahead of time when you're building your ISO. So you'll go through these and you'll pick the ones you want. Next, next, next. Now, I'll show you an example. So iSCSI tools, I choose this one because we're going to need it for Longhorn to mount our disks for storage. NFSD, because I have some NFS mounts in my shares, I'm including this. QEMU guest agent, this is important. This allows the VM image, so Talos in our instance, to communicate with Proxmox. Okay, so the VM needs a bridge to talk to Proxmox. That's the QEMU guest agent. It controls your power, reboots, and all that stuff. And then this utility, I can't remember what exactly this was for. I needed it. It might have been Longhorn. This is like your well, let's look it up real quick what this does again. I can't remember exactly what this does. I think it is. What does this do for us again? I'll go with the AI answer. Trim for SSD, FS trim. Let's see. Miscellaneous utilities, FS trim. I might not actually need this, but I think I needed it. Something with Longhorn. I can't remember. It doesn't. These won't harm you. Like I would strongly recommend you all just if you're gonna follow along, you'll go with these, especially if you're using Longhorn. Now, here's a big caveat that took me a while to figure out with Talos. If you're going to use a GPU for GPU workloads, then you actually need to spin up a second image. And the second image is going to have the NVIDIA driver. So here you're going to have the NVIDIA Container Toolkit LTS, and then the non-free KMod NVIDIA LTS. This is the kernel mod. These two will give you your NVIDIA drivers. And then I have all the same extensions I had from the other image over here, and then this gasket driver. This is a driver I need to support my Google Coral. So I have one of these USB, and I think I have one of the dual ones too. This lets me do inference on video. So if there's something in the video, like an object, the Coral will act like a GPU, and it will draw the box and say, oh, there's a cat, dog, car, truck, whatever. Lightning fast. It's like 5 watts of energy, and they go for about $50, I think, for the USB. So if you really want to do like object detection in your videos, like if you have like a network video recorder solution like Frigate, the Coral's an awesome option if you don't want to have to use a GPU. So because that requires a driver, so if I was just regularly using Linux, I would have to go to find the Ubuntu instructions, sudo apt get, add all your packages, all that fun stuff. Because I can't do that with Talos, and I need this driver, luckily someone has written a driver for it that's first party support, and I just choose it in here. Now, if you might be saying, why don't you just build one image and then use it for GPU VMs and non-GPU VMs? You can't actually do that. So if you include these two drivers and you do not include a GPU, the OS will not boot up. The OS will be stuck in a loop saying something like waiting for NVIDIA card to be present or waiting for something to be up, and it won't actually come up. So you actually have to include a GPU if you're going to do that. I know it sounds weird, but that's why it works. So we're gonna have two images here. So now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna we're gonna download these. So you're gonna come here to ISO, you're gonna click on it and you're gonna download it. Now I named mine, what did I name it? Talos-1.11.iso, and then I have a Talos 1.11-GPU.iso. So we're gonna download those two, and then in Proxmox, we're gonna upload those ISOs. So we're gonna come over here to local. Yours might be named something different. You can really put it wherever, but we need to upload the two ISO images, and you're going to want to keep note where you put it. Now, a quick note on my setup here for this video, because I want to demonstrate using Longhorn with two hard drives. I have like 4 or 5 SSDs. This is a spare kind of lab computer I'm setting up, so I have like 4 or 5 drives. I just spun up ZFS 1, 2, and 3. These are single drive ZFS. So I'm not combining ZFS and doing RAID Z2, RAID Z1, mirror stripes. This is just a dead simple 3 drives, just ZFS single disk. And it's just because I want to show you how I'm going to use multiple drives with Longhorn. And this is, I just like ZFS in general. I don't have enough drives to do 4 drive mirrors or whatever. So this is a lab computer. So don't get too hung up on, me not doing ZFS properly. It's not because I don't know what I'm doing. I have a 24 terabyte RAID Z5 NAS. I have ZFS on my other Proxmox. Like, I'm very familiar. This is just illustrative purposes. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, so you've gotten your ISOs, you've downloaded and uploaded your ISOs. And by the way, if you only have one storage drive, this tutorial still works. I just wanted to show you a little bit more advanced Proxmox just so you can kind of figure out what's going on. So what we're going to do is we need to go create an API token. So you're going to come over here to Data Center, Permissions, API Token, Add. I've already done this, but when you make yours uncheck privilege I cannot speak, privilege separation, and hit add. Now, you can read about this, is basically making it like a root token. This is probably not the best practice and like the most production ready way of doing it, but for this video, just to get you moving, that's how we're going to do it. And you'll notice the username is root at PAM, token ID, I called it IAC, and then I hit add. Now, what I like to do is write all this down. So your schematics for Image Factory here, write them down, put them in notes, because if you need to come back or update, it's kind of nice to remember like what extensions you used. The schematic ID, so if you come down here, like the schematic ID, probably easier to see this way, is the same. So like your schematic ID, if Talos v.112 comes out, you can still download the ISO with all these extensions. You'll just take the GUID and put it in the middle and you'll change your version. It's hard to get back to this full page. It's not the easiest thing. I mean, you can see this URL. I guess you could do it that way. Your schematic will stay fixed. The schematic is like a hash of all these versions. But I just like to write them down. It's just handy for later. So write those down, and then your token will be root at PAM, shebang IAC. Actually, I think it's just an exclamation point. And then a token. So it's root at PAM, and that comes from this. Root at PAM. I call mine IAC, and then I save it. Once you do that, we're like really close. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna clone my repo, and we're gonna use come over to IAC Terraform, and then in here you're gonna make a variables file. I believe I give you an example here. Yep. So what mine looks like is, well, let me go to credentials first. So I'm doing a video. I can rotate these tokens. This does not get checked in. At least it shouldn't. No, I don't think it is. You can look at my screen, and maybe I'll include a better example just so it's crystal clear. But so it's root at PAM, bang, IC equals. So that's the first, it's basically like the username. And then the second part is the actual token that we generated. You want your URL of your Proxmox. The node name, mine's called 1700X. It's just the name of the CPU. And then your password. And I put not my password because I changed it for this video. And then this is your credentials. This is what's going to allow Terraform to authenticate with Proxmox. Now, the variables here, this is important. So what we're saying is Talos ISO file, and Talos GPU. Remember, I'm doing two ISOs, one for my GPU nodes and one for my just regular nodes. Local is in reference to this name here, local. And then the file name is what I uploaded here. So I put this, Talos, these are the names. So what we're going to do, I'm not going to get too much into Terraform. I think you can do tutorials yourself. You can learn Terraform. I'm not an expert in it. To be honest, I use a lot of AI to generate most of this because why not? Seriously, why not just use AI, give in? And then disk storage. So this is important because each VM I create needs a place for the VM to have disk storage. So think about like if you were to spin up Ubuntu on a laptop, you're going to select a hard drive. If there's 3 hard drives, you're going to say, well, install Ubuntu on this hard drive. So because I named mine conveniently ZFS 1, 2, and 3, these could be named anything. My storage, my custom storage, whatever. These are just, I call them ZFS 1, 2, 3 because disk 1, 2, and 3, single nodes, that's what it is. And then for additional disk storage, I'm doing ZFS 2. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to create a VM. I'm going to install Talos on that. And the primary storage is going to be ZFS 1. Then I'm going to add a second disk called ZFS 2 so that when my node spins up, I have 2 disks in my storage disks. So the disk that I want to put most of my media on will be on ZFS 2. You don't have to do this with Talos. You don't have to do this step at all. But I like to keep my main boot OS and its hard drive relatively small. And then my extra storage attached separately. It's a nice separation of concerns. And I can do a little more like performance-based tuning because I can send the disk IO to disk 2 and then like kind of the main operations are on disk 1. It's just a nice way to not overload the VM. And this is my Proxmox network bridge. This is pretty much gonna be the same for everyone. And then finally the nodes. So I'm sure there's better ways to do this and easier ways of Terraform. I'm trying to make this as straightforward as possible. And there's going to be a little bit of, repeating yourself violations, but this guide isn't meant to not overwhelm someone. It's meant to just get the basics. So I'm going to have a control node, master node, and then I'm going to have 2 worker nodes. And one of the worker nodes is going to be a GPU, and one of them is just going to be a regular. And I'm literally only doing this on a lab. Like I might have maybe a couple more normally, but this is just a lab, single instance. This is meant to teach you. So I like to give my names. This is just a convention I came up with. Talos lab worker 1, 2, master. Now this MAC. Now one could argue this is sensitive. One should argue you shouldn't show this. I literally made these up. These are random. This is not a real MAC address. So if you're wondering, like, oh, you got your MAC address, you can get hacked. Okay, cool. Like I literally made these up. Try to hack me. You probably can't. So this MAC address, the reason I put this in here is because what I do is I just literally make these up. I mean, this could be a microwave MAC address or something. In my router, I set the IP. So when you install Talos on the VM, it's not going to just automatically be 192.168.10.101. It's going to be whatever the DHCP server gives out on your router. And so what I like to do is I like to fix the MAC address. In my router, I say, hey, when you see this MAC address, DHCP assign this IP and reserve it. So when this node comes up or down, as many times as I'm going to Terraform this, I am always going to get this IP because I've told my router to look for this MAC address and then pin the IP via DHCP. Same thing here. So that's very important. Your disk size, so like your initial disk size, your cores, your memory, you can kind of set all this here. And then notice down here the additional disk size. So my main boot drive, 64 gigs, and then additional disk is 112 gigs. Made up numbers, it's for an example. I don't schedule any workloads on my masters. Some people do. Some people don't. It's a philosophical thing. There's no right or wrong answer. But because the master is pretty important, I like to just keep the main workload off of it so that it can be, scaled down. Like I probably go down to like 8 gigs here. But this is just personal preference. So this is your like main control variables. So how this works is you'll come over here to terminal, open a terminal, and then I have a README in here, and you can pretty much follow this straightforward. The video is nice because it kind of gives a little context to what's going on. So let's run through it. So we're going to come down here to this Terraform step. So we're going to CD to IAC. We're going to CD to Terraform, and then we're going to CD to Talos cluster. Make sure we're right here. Yep. And so we'll do this first step, Terraform init upgrade. Then we're going to do a plan, and then we're going to say apply it. Okay. So now it's reading all my environment variables, and over here you can see it is starting up. So they're slowly making their way. One thing you'll notice here is that the Quemu guest agent is enabled, and that's done through Terraform. So these are all spinning up. Now, the only one thing I'm going to do different here that's not in Terraform, and this is just kind of I left it out so people didn't get stuck on this and get broken, but I need to attach GPUs here. So in Proxmox, if you go to, it's under resource mappings. I have two GPUs or like little 1050 Ti's. You can map them here and give them a name so that when you come down here, you can go to hardware add, and we can add a PCI device. Where's that? Right here. And then it's mapped already, and I'll just do one GPU just for now. Now, since I've added it, I actually have to reboot this because you can't do it hot. So we'll reboot this, and it should pick up on the next time around. I might have to stop it first, actually. You know what? I think you have to stop it and then start it. Come on. Yep. And then we'll start it up here. Okay. All right, that's starting up. Okay. So now, yep, it's rebooting. Okay, so now we got to move on to the next step. So that's done. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to quick pause this. I'm going to hit, all right, we are back. Okay, I had to pause it real quick. Okay, so we're back here. So the next step is, so you can see the Terraform module installed Talos OS. Now, what you're going to notice when you install Talos for the first time is that it's in maintenance mode. So basically, when you reset Talos or start it from scratch or reformat, whatever you want to call it, you're going to get this maintenance mode. So basically, it's like awaiting instructions. It doesn't know what to do. Notice there's no install wizard. Notice there's no next. Enter your username. It's an immutable operating system, and we have to configure it through what we call the Talos control or APIs. So Talos is all API based when you go give it updates. So let's go do that. I'm drinking a Sam Adams, so I might be a little gassy here, burping. But you gotta do what you gotta do. So let's come in here and let's go do the next step. So technically speaking, you don't need Terraform for this. It's a nice to have. It adds a little more polish to your skills. It gives you a little extra automation. We can Terraform destroy, take it down. I like it because the MAC address are really annoying to type in manually. So, but do note, you don't technically need Terraform. You could just install the ISO, but I really recommend doing it this way. It's a little bit easier. Okay, so next step. So we're going to cd out of here, and we're going to IEC, and we're going to go into Talos. We're using a tool called TalHelper. TalHelper. This guy is a community-based utility for helping you set up Talos and its configurations. And I'll show you an example here in a minute, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to build a tal config file. We're going to generate files with TalHelper and then use Talos control. Talos control is native to Talos. TalHelper is a community-based helper utility to deploy these configuration files to Talos. So if we come in here and we come over to Talos, you're going to have a tal config. Now, this is kind of important to pay attention to. So my Talos version is actually going to be 1.11. I'm going to do v1.33.3 for my Kubernetes version. My cluster name should be Proxmox Talos Lab cluster is a better name. This control, we forgot a step. Okay, before we get there, I totally forgot about this. Okay, so we go through the README. We need to run the script. Okay, so we'll just do a new shell here real quick, cd IAC. I have this little helper utility to generate the environment variable files we're going to use. So let me delete this to show you for TalHelper. This again is optional. This isn't critical to the flow, but I did write this little script. Well, AI wrote the script with me to make my life easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to run this sh and then this tfvar is the Talos environment. Okay, so all this does is it extracts out these values, the MAC address, the control plane names, the gateway IP, the control plane endpoint from the Terraform cluster autovars just because I was being lazy. Like this is not critical. This is just like a convenient way to use this because in the tal config, we can reference variables here and then we can use these variables to build out this file. And it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to follow. And if you want to have like 15 nodes, it's a little bit easier just to template out. Again, remember, the whole goal of this project in the starter kit is to try not to overwhelm the developer or the user or the DevOps person, whoever's going through this guide, with too much automation. I have been on way too many YouTube projects and other people's projects where there's so much automation, you can't debug it, you don't know what's going on, you're a beginner, and you don't take the time to understand it. Once you've established Kubernetes and Terraform and Talos, go automate however much you want to do, and like do it, make yours 10 times better than mine. But if you're learning, the automation is going to make you take a step back, and you're really going to like be cheating yourself, and you're going to let the automation do everything, and you're never going to learn. I tried to make this Terraform and everything we're doing here as realistically simple as possible that most people could follow. And I'm not going to go through the whole Talo config here, but just show you some highlights. So these are pretty much default, so you can run with those. Your control plane endpoint. So Kubernetes is an API, and you need to know like where's the master node. So this value here ends up being 101, which is just my control plane node. So my master node control plane. I used 101 for my IP, and so that's going to be what's set here. When you get into multiple masters and control nodes and you have 3, you need a VIP, and it gets a little more involved, and there's a little bit of a chicken and the egg problem, and I didn't want anyone to have to run into that. So we're using 1 master / control node, and the rest are 2 workers. I would recommend you, if you're starting out, just to do that and keep it simple. Learn how to change it later, but keep it simple. I don't think this matters. I think this is just documentation. If I remember correctly, I don't think you actually need this part. I just leave it in there. It's a nice helpful reminder to myself. Okay, so your nodes. So here's my control node, master, control, whatever you want to call it. And these are templated out. This is going to be my 101 install disk. So it's going to go to dev SDA. This is the first disk. Network interfaces, it's going to grab the DHCP, the hardware address, the routes, blah, blah, blah. Most of this is kind of boilerplate. You just copy paste what I have. And then the worker node, same thing. Host name, it's not going to be a control plane, so this is a worker. The IP address, the install disk, the network drives. And then down here, we should have the second disk somewhere. Install disk. I might need to tune that for the second disk. Oh no, down here, worker specific packages. So for Longhorn, right, I want the second hard drive attached to be an additional disk. And so if you ever have done Linux, when you have a second disk, it's not just automatically mounted. You usually do something like fstab. I think that's called fstab. You'd mount the drive, you'd give it a mount point, like /my mount point. And then on boot, you might have a startup script that like permanently mounts it. That's essentially what this is doing here. You're saying, go mount the physical hard drive. So it's going to be SDB because it's the second drive. Usually in Linux, first drive is SDA, second drive is SDB, third drive is SDC. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a disk, the second disk, and I'm going to give it a mount point of var mount Longhorn SDB. I'm naming this. And so when Talos boots up, it's going to take the second drive, and its file system is going to be mounted at var mount Longhorn SDB. And then these are just some extra parameters. So I believe for this part, I looked up Talos OS Longhorn. And then if you go to the Longhorn guide, and then I think you just search like Talos OS, it has this whole guide. Yeah, I just followed this guide. You just read the guide, go through it, do what you need to do. I'm going to show you how to, I'm going to walk you through in this video. But that's how I figured this out. Some extra metadata stuff. You can read about this. Just take my word for it. Let's get into the actual next steps here. Okay, so again, we took a detour to create the environment variables, and I want to walk you through that. So we're in Talos. Now, the very first time, since I'm using SOPs, SOPs is a way to encrypt files like one way. It's like SOPs and age. You need to create. So up here, I'm not gonna run this because I don't want to show the whole file. But what you would do is you would make a directory in your home under config sops _ age. You would run this command age keygen -o, open this keys file, and that's going to create a like one-time configuration for your asymmetrical encryption and decryption of keys. If you read the very top of this tells you need to install all these. I'm on Mac right now, but on Linux, you would do the same thing, except it'd be like apt-get and then the variables. So we need Terraform, Tal helper, Talos control, Cube control, SOPs, age, and Cilium CLI. These are all run, these are all CLI commands, and you'll do the same for Linux or Mac. And these all work on both platforms. I've already created this. I've already done this before, so I'm not going to do it. But what we do need to do, what you'll need to do if you're following this, is you will create a .sops.yaml, and this is not has nothing to do with Talos. This is just how you are going to encrypt data so you can put it into Git. And so this here, the sops.yaml, this is kind of like the public key, if I remember correctly. So we come back down to the README. What's that README? Right here. Okay, so I've already done that. So what we're going to do, let's come down to here. We're on this step. So you need to export this key. We're going to run this. Now that this is an environment variable in the shell command, we'll run tal helper gen secret tal.secrets.sops.yaml. So watch up here. I'm going to do this. And now we should have, yes, this secrets file that's been encrypted. So we're saying tal helper gen a secret tal secrets out. So this is kind of like your certs, secrets, kind of core meta information needed for Talos. You could technically not use SOPs to encrypt it, but that'd be pretty bad. I don't recommend that. Okay, so now, we keep losing the README. Okay, so then we're going to encrypt it. So this will actually encrypt it. Now it's all encrypted. That's all SOPs does. So SOPs encrypts files, decrypts files locally to your computer. So you can check them. I can check this into a repo now. Now, technically, on this YouTube video, you've seen all the data, and you could I don't really know what you could do with it because this cluster doesn't have that much public data or anything I care about. And even if it did get hacked, I'm gonna rotate all these keys anyways. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, so let's go back to IAC. So we're almost there. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna generate the config file. So this cluster config is going to create all the YAML needed for each Talos OS's node configs. I'll just show you. It'll be easier. Technically, I've already done this step, but I like to do it again just out of practice. So watch this. Tal helper, gen config, and then pointing to my environment variable file. I run that, and I get this error because it says v1 is not compatible with this tal helper version. So what we're going to do is brew, I think, update tal helper, or it might be upgrade. Yeah, it's upgrade. And that's because the version of tal helper I have in my CLI is out of date. Now, when you get to this stage, we get this issue, and unfortunately, it might fail. So, fail to parse files. Please fix issues. Okay. All right. So, let's see here. Let's do a little live debugging. I might cut this out of the video, or I might watch it. Let's see here. When was the last release? Last week? Okay. Support. So, I opened an issue before, and I think we'll just do the same thing. Let's find my name. Yep. So we want to support Talos. I'm going to do the same thing here. New issue. Support Talos 1.11. Wonder if I just have to add a 0 back there, but let's look real quick. Let's go grab this real quick. Whoops. Yeah. Come on. All right, let's go look at releases 14 hours ago. I'll grab this and then just let them know that this is released. Now I might have to add a 0. So I'll make this issue real quick. And then we're gonna go over. I wonder if we can just tal config on that 0. Let me try this a second. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm sure this will be fine. So I didn't have the 0. Technically, I'm still this issue is still valid. Because it technically doesn't exist, but it still generated it. So if you come back over here, this is what it did. It made for the, down here, master node. This is the actual, if you didn't use tal helper, you would actually have to go build all this out. So you'd have to go out and build all this by hand, which is probably not too hard to do, but it's also annoying. So when you use the tal helper, and with the tal config, and you write a little JSON. This is kind of like mini Terraform, kind of, but we're generating this file, and this contains all the information about the node details, the OS details, everything that needs to go into this master node. Notice the install disk. If you come down to the worker, we should see, yep, the Longhorn stuff. We should see the ports. And you could go through this yourself. I'm like, oh, here's your second disk. Right, here's your second disk. Notice I didn't put this in here. It got generated. Okay, so now we're almost there. We're going to come back down to our README, and we need to run. So we've Okay, so we've generated all of our files. We've terraformed the VMs. We've generated our files. Now what we need to do is we actually need to apply this. So I already have Talos control installed because I did a brew install of that already. So we're gonna run this command first. So we're in the Talos directory. Okay, we're gonna paste this in Talos apply config insecure Talos config equals nodes node files. Basically, what it's saying is Talos control. Go apply the config. It's insecure first time around, meaning not HTTPS, no certs. You're basically doing your first time install. You're telling it where your Tails config is. Where's the directory? I'm sorry. Yes, this is like kube control, except for Talos. This is how you interact with Talos. These got generated and put in here. Okay, so we come back down to the readme. I don't know why it doesn't stick. And then we're saying, okay, because you might have multiple Talos installs, like 5, let's say you ran 5 production networks, you're gonna have 5 different Talos configs. If you had 5 clusters, you might have 5. I only have 1 right now on this machine. I have more in real life, but I nuked them. So this is saying, hey, for this Talos control, the context and how to config lives in this file. And then we're going to connect to this node on this IP, and then we're going to apply the config. Whoops, let me do that. We're going to apply this config, and this config is this. And basically, this is like saying, Talos OS, you're in maintenance mode. You don't know anything about your life yet, and I'm about to deploy this config. You're going to read it, and then you're going to become immutable. So I'm going to hit this. And what we should look at first here, see how this says maintenance mode? Basically, nothing going on. It's pretty dead. As soon as I run this, what? Failed to open. What do you mean failed to open? Cluster config, Talos lab, master 01. Oh, you know what? I know what it did. Proxmox, Talos, cluster. I think I renamed something in this video and I just broke it. Proxmox, Talos. There needs to be a lab in front of here because I changed it. That's why. So we'll just quick fix this real quick. I'm glad some of these things are breaking on the video because they'll show you what could potentially go wrong with your setup. And then you'll leave a comment and say it didn't work. So you've already seen the towel helper fail once. That's great. I'm just gonna leave that in the video. And then you saw this fail because I renamed it. But here we go. Let's try this again one more time. And I don't need to regenerate this. Like this README is hard coded. So I'm gonna do this one more time. There we go. Now, if you come over here, it's going to start to start flashing. It's going to say error. I mean, it's going to go through a thing. Like it's going to take a couple minutes to go through everything. We're going to do the other drives too. So we're going to do this one and we're going to do this one. So this is the first step to apply the configs to the nodes. They will take it and we'll let them run through a minute. It'll take a minute. See how it says like waiting for service CRI to be up. Pay attention to these logs, because this is what happened with the NVIDIA one, is that when I used an ISO image with NVIDIA and I did not attach a GPU, it would say waiting for NVIDIA something something to be up. And well, here we go. So at this point, notice it doesn't say maintenance mode anymore. It says Proxmox Labs, says cluster. What's going on over here? Waiting for this to be up. Come over here. I just like to check all these. This one says running. Interesting. This one's still chilling, I guess. Interesting. And then this one says waiting. Okay, well, we're not really ready yet. So we need to execute the bootstrap. The first things first, I'm going to make sure the Tails config is proper here. Export Tails config, current working directory cluster. Yep, this should be fine. And then what we're going to do is the bootstrap's going to be down here. So this is going to give us kube config. So it's going to say Tails control. I want kube config. This is my master node and put it in this directory and run that. And so now in paper, kube control get nodes. Okay, so it's failing. It doesn't work. We're not set up yet. We're not fully set up yet because we have not ran Bootstrap. So I don't actually think you need to run this command because I think that this needs to be taken out of the readme. But I'll just run it real quick. Yeah, this whenever you see gen command in telehelper, it's going to generate the command you need to run. And I already did that for you here. So we'll just do this. Okay, so we're going to bootstrap the server. You can only run this once. And basically, I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's basically saying you've applied your configs. You've told Talos, like, here's my MAC address, here's my disks, everything I need. The bootstrap is like saying, like, go make Kubernetes happen. Like, go put this thing to load. So I'm gonna run that, and you'll see in the logs too. It'll say waiting on Bootstrap, waiting on Bootstrap. Let's see what the official meaning of Bootstrap is. What? Did I type that wrong? Bootstrap. I'll just use AI. What does Talos Bootstrap? When in doubt, use AI. Using initial. Oh, okay. To initialize the etcd cluster in the Kubernetes control plane. So basically, it is bootstrapping Kubernetes. I'll leave it at that. There's more to it, obviously, but it's making Kubernetes a thing. Remember, Talos OS is an OS that runs Kubernetes and comes with Kubernetes pre-installed, for lack of better terms. But just because it has Kubernetes, we still need to bootstrap it, and we need to give it the initial data so it can actually become a thing. So there's not much, you won't see much logs here. Like once you run it, you just kind of wait. And so it could take 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It could be just done. Usually when you see running, that's a good sign. It's a little interesting that I don't see the side, like this node doesn't seem quite right. Again, this is the NVIDIA node. Could be something I changed recently, but that's okay. We're going to keep running with it. So if we do this again, control get and not type apparently, nodes, we're going to see not ready. I don't know why it only sees one here. That's interesting. Like I said, it takes a minute. And sometimes, if I get to the state, sometimes like right now, because I expect this to work and it doesn't because I'm recording, let's just give it a reboot. When in doubt, reboot. And then I'll do this one too. When in doubt, reboot. And let's see if that helps. Now, one thing you'll need to note is that the ISO was what we booted from to get Talos into the state of maintenance mode, but we installed on a hard drive. So I made sure that SCSI 0, which is basically the first hard drive, is in position 1 of boot up and not the ISO, because I used to make this mistake where the ISO was first, and every time the VM would reboot, it would go into basically maintenance mode or like the equivalent of like recovery mode. And that's because it was choosing the ISO first. Now, could I detach the ISO? Sure, but I like to leave it there. So these orderings are important. Okay, and because it's a pretty dang small OS, it reboots really fast because there's not much to do. And let's check this. That's running. And let's check this. And it will probably get there in a minute. This is looking way better. It has a name. And so if we come down here and we run this command one more time, we see all our notes. Now they say not ready. So we're on the last step. We technically already did this earlier, so we don't need to do that step. We'll do this step. Now we need to install Cilium, okay? Cilium, from my first video, you remember, is our network layer of Kubernetes. There's a few things you need to pay attention to with Talos. Very, very important. This install command actually has quite a bit more presets. So when you do Cilium install, you're basically installing the Helm chart, and then you're setting the Helm chart values. Cilium and Talos require a little bit extra work. So if you type in Talos and Cilium and you go read this, you can go basically just go through this guide. It'll tell you everything you need to know, special flags. If you're using kubeproxy, meaning kubeproxy being your VIP, or you're gonna let Cilium be your VIP, that's how we're setting ours up. And this, you just got to read these docs and pay attention. This is one where you can like let LLMs help you out. You know, it can read into it, but an LLM can help you out. So mine's pretty verbose, and that's just because I want this just to work for everyone. So we're gonna run this. And at this point, we're gonna be able to get the CNI installed, and we can start to install our apps, Argo CD, and everything I saw in the last video we can do. But one thing you do need to pay attention to is under networking, under Cilium, IP pool stays the same. Your L2 policy stays the same. Again, yeah, check your interface, your values. So there's a few, these values, if you do my first guide, do not directly work on Talos because Talos has a very strict OS. And there's different flags here. So if you're like, oh, okay, I did your first video, I'm great. You can't just copy paste everything. You'll actually need to copy paste this from this repo and just pay attention to all your values here and go from there. It's going to be like these and these. And again, if you're like, well, I need to like really understand what's going on, read the docs and make sure you're on the latest version. So when in doubt, read the docs. Talos guides are really good. Or just use my values. And at this point, we can do kube control config view raw, config view dash raw. Yeah. And this will be our kube config. So again, I'll rotate all these, but we'll come up here. We can copy this. And then if you use a tool like Lens or something, we can go add from pasting. And then let's just check the IP up here. So this is gonna, that should work. Yeah, that should work. Okay, I'm gonna paste that. I think it's this one. I don't know what that other one is. Workloads, pods. There should be nothing here other than Cilium. Yep, everything's green. Here's our nodes, and now we have Cilium installed. And upgrades, you can read the Talos docs, but that's it. So video's a little long. You can kind of skip around, but the README is, we went through the README basically, and then everything else is getting Argo CD set up and everything from last. It should work. So yeah, give this a whirl and hopefully this helps. Take care, everyone. All right, I left off one more important thing for this video that I told you I was going to do with Longhorn. So remember in Longhorn, we added a second disk SDB to var mount Longhorn SDB. You're going to copy this value, which you're going to see in here. Go to Longhorn, go to the node, go ahead and hit edit. Come down here and make scheduling disabled on this disk. Hit add disk. We're going to add this disk. We're going to enable it. So what this is going to say is don't put any workloads on the main OS drive. And we're going to put all the workloads with storage on Longhorn SDB. What this means is that we're going to say when a pod or an app wants to save storage, let's say it's a database or media or pictures, instead of going onto the first hard drive in the VM, it's going to go to the second hard drive we've added. And this is in the case of where maybe you have a hard drive that's 1 TB that you want to add to the node. And let's say you have a bunch of terabyte hard drives, and you want to attach the storage to give it more space. This is how you would do it. And I just hit enable, eviction requested false. Just these settings are fine. Just make sure you disable this disk. Come down here, it's save. And then you're going to do it on this next node as well. So you're going to come into here, disable the main disk. We're going to add our secondary disk, and the name doesn't really matter. Pop this in, make sure you hit enable, and then hit save. And now what you'll see is we had 67 or 61 gigs of storage. When this thing refreshes, you'll find you'll have 170, 173. That's because we added a bigger disk in Proxmox. So what we did is we said, use this hard drive as SDB and attach it to Longhorn under that mount we made. So we said, we're going to have an SDB. We're going to mount it in the OS as var mount Longhorn underscore SDB. And then we're going to tell Longhorn where that file is, or the drive mount is, by adding it here. And boom, that's where this drive comes in. If we didn't have this, we'd be using all of this storage. But since we've added a second disk, now we can use this one. Thanks.